And if interest rates return to the average for the last 2 decades, America will be spending more than the planet's entire military budget on debt interest. Well, what does that mean in practical terms? We're already covering about 80% of the cost of the Chinese armed forces. Last year, the Pentagon issued an alarming report to Congress on Beijing's massive military buildup, including new missiles, upgraded bombers, and an aircraft carrier R&D program intended to challenge U.S. dominance in the Pacific. What the report didn't mention is who's paying for it. Answer, you are. When the communists take Taiwan, rural families in Hillsdale County and small businesses in Coldwater will have paid for it. By 2015, the People's Liberation Army, which is the largest employer on the planet, bigger even than the U.S. Department of Community Organizer grant applications, bigger even than the U.S. Department of Cowboy Poetry Organizer grant applications, will be entirely funded by U.S. taxpayers. Beijing believes a half-millennium Western interregnum is about to come to an end and the world's about to return to Chinese dominance. I think they're wrong on the latter, but right on the former. Unless things change now, not in mid-century, not in 2030, not tomorrow, but now, the civilization that built the modern world is passing the point of no return. Dr. Ahn knows a lot about Winston Churchill. He's got a statue of Churchill in the Student Union here at Hillsdale. 60 years ago, when the Pax Britannia yielded to the Pax Americana, it was a passing of the baton from a faltering power to its greatest son. That's not what is happening now, and it's not likely to go that smoothly. By 2027, according to Goldman Sachs, and rather sooner according to other analysts, the world's leading economy will be a communist dictatorship whose legal, political, and cultural traditions are as foreign to its predecessors as could be devised. And even more civilizationally startling, unlike the Americans and British and the Dutch and Italians before them, the preeminent economic power will be a country that doesn't use the Roman alphabet. Around the world, they're already beginning to plan for the post-American world. They talk about it openly in foreign chancelleries. Take the ructions in the Arab world these last few weeks that have brought down some of the oldest dictatorships on the planet. Obviously, there are various local factors in play. In Tunisia, 60% of young people are college graduates, but there are no jobs for them. In Bahrain, they're flush with cash, but a Sunni monarchy rules a mainly Shia population. In Libya, they seem to have wearied of being governed by a deranged psychotic drag queen who's increasingly indistinguishable from his Madame Tussauds waxwork, aside from the pull my string and I'll talk stream of consciousness drivel for 4 hours mechanism in the back. These are local variations, but for the region as a whole, one way to think of it is as the dawn of the post-Western Middle East. And across the region, secular kleptocrats who represent nothing and no one are being replaced by forces that represent something all too real. We used to say that, Washington used to say that Hosni Mubarak may be an SOB, but he's our SOB. The French said that President Ben Ali was their SOB. The British, even more stupidly, fancied Colonel Gaddafi as their SOB, just that he's more or less decayed into that Madame Tussauds phase of his dotage. In order to kiss up to Gaddafi, they released the Lockerbie bomber from his Scottish prison and put him on a plane back to Tripoli on the grounds that he had terminal cancer and only 3 months to live. That was nearly 2 years ago. The minute he landed in Tripoli, the terminal cancer cleared up. It's amazing what getting out of a British National Health Hospital can do for your life expectancy. But in all these situations, something is consistent. This is at the post-Western Middle East. And as Barack Obama makes it clear in every statement, in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Libya, in Bahrain, in Jordan, and wherever's next, the superpower is a spectator. That is something that all great powers in decline adjust to. The fact that they can no longer afford to influence events on the world stage. They turn inwards. The horizons shrivel. You can spend a month plowing through the CBO statistics, but they all make the same point. Under no likely scenario does America's debt burden do anything but go up, and that means decline, and decline will not be decline as in Europe, but decline will be something far sharper, far more convulsive, and something that will happen far quickly than the genteel decline underway in Europe. When government spends on the scale that Washington's got used to, it's not a spending crisis, it's a moral one. There's nothing virtuous about caring, compassionate progressives demonstrating how caring and compassionate and progressive they are by spending money yet to be earned by generations yet to be born. That's what fiscal conservatives often miss. It's not a green eye shade issue. Increasing dependency, disincentivizing self-reliance, absolving the citizenry from responsibility for their actions. The multi-trillion-dollar debt catastrophe is not the problem, but merely the symptom. It's not just about balancing the books, but about rebalancing the most basic impulses of society. Credit depends on trust. Trust presupposes responsibility. So if you have a credit boom in an age that has all but abolished personal responsibility, it's not hard to figure out how it's going to end. The US Bureau of the Public Debt, and no, I didn't make that up. Did you know there's a Bureau of the Public Debt? It's a real government building. It's headquartered in West Virginia. You can't miss it. It's about the only building in the state, apart from the Ku Klux Klan Lodge, that's not named after Robert C. Byrd. The Bureau of the Public Debt uses as its motto the words of Alexander Hamilton. The United States debt, quote, the United States debt, foreign and domestic, was the price of liberty, unquote. But today, foreign and domestic debt piles up to the cost of liberty. To the cost of liberty. It is a direct assault on liberty. Big government very directly leads to small citizens, the smallest citizens. Conservative pundits are often accused of wanting to turn the clock back to the 1950s. Not me. There's no need to turn the clock back because fiscally and geopolitically, America's clock is stuck in the Truman administration. At the US Treasury, at the State Department, the Pentagon, it's forever chiming 1950. At the dawn of the American era, Washington was the last man standing, the victor of the Second World War, and with its cities and factories intact, unlike Europe's. It had a unique dominance of the free world, and it could afford to be generous, so it was. America had more money than it knew what to do with, so it funded the UN and a dozen subsidiary bodies, and it absolved post-war Europe of paying for its own defense. And as Germany and Japan and the rest of the West recovered, we continued to pay, garrisoning not remote colonies, but some of the richest nations in history. Having forsworn imperialism, we sat back as the UN fell into the hands of our enemies and their appeasers, and still we picked up the check. Western economic ideas were taken up by Asia and Eastern Europe and Brazil and Turkey, and they enriched many lands, but we saw ourselves as the unipolar hyperpower, so at NATO and the G7 and everywhere else, each time the bill came and the rest of the gang skipped to the bathroom, we were happy to stick it on our tab. We threw money at our friends to defend them against hostile powers that had collapsed a generation earlier, and at our enemies to enable them to use their oil revenues to fund anti-Americanism worldwide, and we threw money at dozens of countries in between who have no geopolitical significance whatsoever, but wouldn't say no to a massive subsidy for an AIDS prevention condom program or whatever it was. And we never even noticed that we were no longer paying for our generosity, not in cash, but with foreign credit cards. 1950 never ended. Even after the 2008 crash, even after the multi-trillion-dollar deficits, it's still 1950. At the 2009 Copenhagen Climate Summit, America, broke, bankrupt, drowning in debt, offered to pay for China, the country in whose debt we're drowning, to lower its carbon footprint. We offered to pay for China, the country that's going to be the world economic power in the next 10, 15 years, We offered to pay them to lower their carbon footprint. I happened to be on Fox News with Jonah Goldberg that week, and Jonah said to me, that's like volunteering to winterize your loan shark's home.